Supervisor, we do have that other number that was called, so if it's okay with you, I'd like to let her ask a question back here.
Sure. Hi. Joy Macy. I'd like to know what your thoughts are on the fact that the United States in the last 100 days has suffered a terrible loss of pride. People are just ashamed of their country. And when I want to go to Europe and I'm told, well, you can, but you know, people hate you there now. And even in Canada, I think it's a terrible thing that has happened. I'd like your opinion. And the other question is, as part of that, is the fact that we are now not supporting Ukraine. And I'd like to have your opinion on the withdrawal of all our funds.
So, on the issue of America's standing in the world, we're going to strongly agree to disagree. The fact is, after 4 years of Joe Biden's foreign policy, America and the world are in the most precarious place since the lead up to World War II. You had that disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the terrorist attack against Israel, the threats emanating in the Indo-Pacific from China. The unholy alliance between China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea is a major threat to the free world. And if you look at what happened under the last administration with Iran, they wanted to renegotiate the Iran nuclear deal. They wanted to reinstate the JCPOA in a slimmed-down version. And as a result, what they did was they lifted sanctions on Iran's petroleum exchange with China to the tune of $200 billion. That is what funded Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. That's what funded their nuclear program. So the fact is, America's standing in the world was already in a precarious place. Now, when it comes to Ukraine, I have been a strong supporter of Ukraine. I continue to support Ukraine. I voted for every dollar of aid to Ukraine. And the reason I did is a few reasons. One, if Ukraine falls, that will be a disaster for Europe and the United States. If Russia is successful, Vladimir Putin will not stop at Ukraine. Vladimir Putin is a vile dictator and thug, and the world will be better off when Vladimir Putin is no longer in power, period. But the challenge after 3 years of war in Ukraine is that they are not in the strongest possible position, barring U.S. troops going in. And I do not believe the American people want to send U.S. troops into Ukraine. What we have been willing to do is send resources, send military equipment, engage in training, and I do believe we should continue to do so. However, I have supported every dollar that has been spent in support of Ukraine. However, the challenge right now is this. If we continue down that trajectory, Ukraine is in a situation where, at best, they are likely to fight to a stalemate for another year, 2 years, 3 years. And with it will be more death and destruction. I don't want to see anybody die, and certainly not innocent Ukrainians. And you see, they want peace. They want this war to end. And so the objective is, at this moment, to negotiate a settlement. To negotiate a settlement and end this conflict in Ukraine and end the destruction that has occurred. But in order to negotiate, you actually do have to sit down. You actually do have to get both sides. I was heartened to see President Trump meet with President Zelensky in the Vatican yesterday. I thought that was a positive sign. I thought that was an important step because we do need an agreement between Ukraine and Russia to end this conflict. And so that is critically important as we move forward. Equally as important. How am I lying?
Congressman,
equally important.
we have several people who have been asked multiple times to please leave. I'd like this to be the last question, so then the people who did want to listen to you are able to.
Folks.
We have room for one more question after this.
Folks, so with respect...
I do.
With respect to Iran...
Me too.
What is imperative with Iran is to ensure that Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, period. And that is something that we are going to have to deal with in the coming weeks and months, and hopefully avoid an escalation.
Okay, this is the last question that's going to be asked. 058106. 058106.
I'm coming.
Zero 40.
And then the woman.
058106.
Okay. We have a conflict, so I'm going to do two quick questions, but they need to be quick.
I'm a number. Hi, yes, Congressman Lawler. I actually want to thank you for all your work that you do.
Folks, could you please be quiet and listen to the person who's asking the question? Please be respectful to your neighbor.
That's okay.
Go ahead, young lady.
Yes, I want to thank you, Congressman Lawler, for all the work you do and remind you and the audience that Rockland County residents overwhelmingly voted for President Trump as president of this United States. And we expect you to honor the citizens who wanted his protocol and his changes. So thank you. And my question for you is, Congressman Lawler, how do you plan on protecting federal religious rights in the state of New York, where religious exemptions have been removed, which is a violation of their First Amendment religious liberties, and the state, it seems to be violating that?
You're talking about with respect to vaccines and health decisions?
At public and private schools, there was just a case in upstate New York with an Amish school that has been fined for not providing vaccines because Yep.
Look, I have always believed in religious exemptions, and when before I got to the state legislature, they voted to repeal the religious exemption. I would not have supported that. I support it being reinstated. On a federal level, look, I think obviously individual constituents, folks,
this is the last
sit down,
question. So can we please behave
and if you don't want to
ourselves?
sit, you can leave. It's that simple. So with respect to, from the federal standpoint, obviously, I do believe there can and probably should be court intervention. So if any entity or individual wanted to bring a lawsuit, certainly we can look legislatively to see if there are opportunities to protect, obviously, religious exemptions when it comes to that.
Okay.
Did you do that, or you can? You certainly can.
I'll give you
yes,
my
you
card
certainly
afterwards.
can.
We can connect.
Yep.
We-
But we can talk. We
have-
can follow up.
We have the last question here. This man's ticket was called before, so if that's okay, he promised he'd make it quick.
No worries.
Pressure's on. Here we go. So, all The emoluments clause is designed to ensure the public officials prioritize the interests of U.S. citizens and they don't have personal gain or foreign influence. President Trump now has his own cryptocurrency. The government has no idea who's putting money in, who's taking money out. They don't know who the individuals are or the governments are. He makes money on every investment trade. He has his own social media platform that financially benefits him when he exclusively posts on it in order to increase members, bring attention to which increases his revenues. Not to mention the gold watches, the Bibles, the $2 billion from the Saudis, close, the $2 billion for his son-in-law. If this was the Biden administration, you'd be demanding a hearing. So why are we not demanding a hearing?
So, obviously, when the Democrats took control of Congress during the first administration, they did do numerous hearings on this. When Joe Biden was in office, yes, the Oversight Committee did hearings with respect to his son's foreign dealings. At the end of the day, to me, the issue of crypto, we are actually in the process through the Financial Services Committee of passing federal regulatory framework when it comes to crypto, because we don't have one. There is not currently a regulatory framework, which certainly is imperative. As I said before, earlier, when it comes to the issue of people trading stocks, I don't believe in that. If you are an elected official, certainly at the federal level, I think it should be precluded. And so certainly one of the things that we can look at, obviously, is once we have a federal regulatory framework, is how we might deal with that with respect to cryptocurrency. But with respect to any type of investigation, at the end of the day, if you own a business, if you have business in trust or a corporate holding, which is what most of the president's business dealings are, they're corporate, that is a separate legal entity. And his sons, as far as I understand, are running the business.
Okay, that's the last question. I want to personally thank Congressman Lawler who agreed to hold this town hall knowing what was going to happen tonight.
Well, I want to thank Teresa and Brendel for being very gracious and patient and kind. And I certainly want to thank my staff who, unfortunately, over the first few months have continually been subjected to a lot of hate, berating, and frankly, terrible conduct. Brooke, you really need to stop. You really need to stop, Brooke. You really do. It's sad, Brooke. Okay. You really need to stop, Brooke. It's sad. It's very sad. So, look, folks, appreciate you coming out tonight. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Okay, Brooke. Have a good night, Brooke. Have a good night. All right, folks, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming. Enjoy.